Good evening and welcome back to another episode of Please Call Me Crazy, brought to you by Free People Radio and now powered by our first sponsor, TireGet.com. That's TireGet.com. You all have to buy tires from somebody. You might as well buy them from us. Help fund the movement, help support the movement. We believe in the freedom of movement, and that's exactly what the establishment wants to take from you now. I am your host, Royce White, here in the belly of the beast, Minneapolis, Minnesota, for episode number 52. The day is May 31st, year of our Lord 2023. Today is my mother's birthday. So happy birthday, Mom, out there. We love you. We all love you, and we're thankful that you helped bring me into the world. It's an incredible week for me. Buried my great uncle. On Friday, we're going to have the great Kenny Maurer as our family and friends episode. And he is the most tenured official in NBA history who was effectively exiled from the league and persecuted for not accepting the vaccine. He comes from my same St. Paul neighborhood. He and my grandfather are good friends in the athletic community. Kenny's a legend, obviously having such an illustrious career as an NBA official. And burying my uncle, who I'm sure Kenny is also very new and grew up with in the neighborhood. Burying my uncle, I got to see all of my family and relatives from the St. Paul area, and it's good. You know, funerals are sad and they're heavy and they're painful, but as you get older and as families sometimes start to move apart, especially in today's world, I was just telling a bunch of my family members that this yesterday with as much with as easy as it's become to communicate, it doesn't make sense that we don't do a better job of communicating. Start a family group text. Just throw a hello in there from now and again, right? I mean, we become so separated, even from when I was a kid. You know, at 10 years old, every weekend there was a barbecue. Every weekend there was a cookout. Every weekend, there was a family activity, even if it was going to the water park or to the movies or just out to the local parks, the city parks, and having a picnic and playing some basketball or whatever the case may be. And my family certainly got away from that when my great grandfather died. That probably had a lot to do with it. He was sort of the rock of our family at that family wide level, as a great grandfather should be, right? All of the kids from that lineage come down from his loins. So when he passed back when I was 13, the family definitely started to, fractionate, and now we bury his first child since his death, my great uncle Stephen. And it was good. It was good to be back at St. Peter Claver, the Catholic parish that I was baptized at there in St. Paul. Looking forward to getting all four of my children baptized very soon. We put that off long enough, in part due to me traveling and things like that. But it was good to be back with family. Kenny Maurer is a close family friend of the St. Paul neighborhood. He'll be the family and friend guest on Friday. We'll talk about his time in the NBA and some of the great NBA stories, but as well as his fight against the vaccine and his overall outlook on the world today and where he is with that fight. Obviously, he's approaching retirement, and I'm positive with my own dealings with the NBA that they would try and railroad his pension, his much earned and well deserved pension. And Kenny was a great ref as well. I mean, he wasn't just there; he was respected by all of the players in terms of refereeing. Obviously, people probably didn't agree with his calls. That happens all the time with referees. But he would talk to you like a player, and he was a respected, much respected official. So I say that all because it's wild to have to bury an uncle, and then your mother's birthday is 2 days later, and she was very close with my uncle as well. He struggled with some addiction issues during his life, but he was certainly the coolest guy in our family. And when I say cool, he was just a kind spirited, funny, very very uplifting character. He went through all of his struggles with addiction and so on and so forth, but and no doubt that probably played a significant role in cutting his life short. But I mean, he lived to be in his later 60s, and that's as Father Kevin McDonough stated at the funeral, which I thought was very eloquent and beautiful and timely and needed for the family to hear, is it's not a wonderment that he died early. It's a wonderment that he lived as long as he did, given his lifestyle. And my mom read a poem, and she did a great job. We're gonna have her on the podcast, I think. Here, we're gonna have mom on. We'll have mom on next week as a celebration of her birthday, and let you guys get to know the woman that raised me and contributed a lot to who I am now. Um, but it's incredible to see all the family, to have to bury an uncle, to see at the cemetery our other family members that have perished, and my own mom, who is now in her mid 50s, and we just never know. We just never know when we'll get our number called by the Lord above. So happy birthday, Mom. I love you, and I appreciate it. Appreciate you and the rest of my family as well. Everybody's going through a hard time. Some of them listen to the podcast, some of them don't. Some of them are probably cross with me because of my views on the podcast, but they'll come around because the truth is certainly on the side of the person on this end of the microphone. And we're going to talk about that today. So we're getting down to it. We're going to do a sort of hybrid of current events and some video work, some reaction work. And I don't know if anybody saw my 25-minute interview with Lou Valentino over on his channel. And if you just go on YouTube and search Lou Valentino, he has a very big YouTube channel. I did a 3-hour interview with him that you can find on Rumble. But I also did he chopped that down into what I thought was a very good 25-minute overview of our 3-hour interview. So go check that out if you get a chance. But in doing the interview, it made me think about my own channel. And you guys can tell me if you are drop in the comments below whether you think this would be good or not. I want to start to address more headlines in real time. The thing we try to do with the podcast up until this point, and as well with Professor Penn's podcast that you can catch on Tuesdays and Thursdays, the thing we've tried to do is bring people's focus back to pertinent history. Pertinent history, so you don't think that all of this stuff is just happening spontaneously with no real rhyme or reason. No, the things we're seeing today are based in a very deep, a very corrupt, and a very accessible history. I think Professor Penn's done a great job of proving just how accessible a lot of this information is. And I love when the great Steve Bannon says there are no conspiracies, there are no coincidences, there are no conspiracies, but there are no coincidences. And what he's saying is that the conspiracy is not really a conspiracy if it's right out there in the open. And we see a lot of that today. And we're going to get to some of that in this episode. But I want to start to do more reaction videos. I think the modern human mind is so drawn towards certain graphic elements, certain marketing style elements. And I think Lou Valentino has done a great job in building his YouTube channel off of some reaction videos. So we're going to start to implement some of that into our program. So you'll have your full episodes, you'll have your shorts and your clips, but you'll also have reactions that are independent from any episode, or they may be, from the episode if the episode happened to be on that given topic. But we really want to start to do reaction videos that are completely separate from the podcast work. So adding more things as we go, growing at a steady rate, getting throttled. We can tell from the feedback on the channel and the comments that many people are surprised that the subscribers haven't grown quicker given the content and their level of satisfaction with the content and the dialogue. And that wouldn't surprise us. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me at all. I've been censored and shadow banned since my first and early days as a legal adult at 21 years old, fighting against the NBA and the mainstream media industrial complex. So being shadow banned is not, or censored or silenced or blackballed or outcast is not new to me, and we're certainly not discouraged by it. We're going to continue to grow at a steady rate, and we want to grow the conversation in a way that's genuine and authentic. Bar any of these other political agendas, any of these other interests, any of these other, anything that's going on, where we're not interested in that. What we're interested in is building the deepest and most penetrating and accurate dialogue that we can for all of you out there that find your way to the podcast. On the audio side, we're growing at a very, very steady rate. We're rapidly approaching 1 million downloads, so we're very confident with that. And I think we are almost up to date on our BitChute. Is that correct? We're very close to being up to date on our BitChute with all the episodes, so we're backed up properly. And we do have a band.video channel with everything backed up as well. And we're fastly or quickly approaching being fully caught up there. As obviously the band.video channel started 30 episodes after we started the podcast, so it just takes a little time to get everything uploaded. But we're clicking on all cylinders, and we're actually implementing some things here in the studio that's going to speed up the process of production. So we're going to have Tanner being able to work remote some and be able to control the podcast or control the recording and production while also getting our content up and getting it clipped up so we can get out to more people. 10 minutes in, we appreciate your viewership today and in the future, and strap in, it's going to be a good one. I want to play this first video. First off, let me say this. The most important news right now, without a doubt, is the debt ceiling. There's no doubt about it. The debt ceiling is the most important news in all of America, nay, all of the world. And I want to hone in on, before we even play the video, let me go back to the beginning, because we get new people all the time. And I'm going to give a brief synopsis of where we've come to in this dialogue. We are in a four-player jump ball, a four-player geopolitical jump ball, four-player jump ball around the world. You got the free people of America, which represent the free people of the world, all over the world, people who want to be free, who believe in having inalienable rights given to them, granted to them by a creator, the one true living God, people who believe and want freedom. Even if they don't know what freedom really is, or they don't necessarily know how freedom really functions, or they don't understand what impedes their freedom and what boasts their freedom. People who want freedom. And then you have the party of Davos and the globalists. And these are your international dictators. They run an international dictatorship, an international cartel, greatly contingent upon the military of the United States, but also the international banking community, this sort of international centralized banking cartel. And we'll talk more about that shortly. Then you have China, which is an ethno-national dictatorship to boot. They believe in the Chinese people. They believe they have the mandate of heaven. They believe China should be the center of the world. They believe in their people. But they have such a radical belief in their people, they're also willing to sacrifice a lot of their people to get to their end goal. And then you have Russia, who is more of a nationalist dictatorship, not so much an ethno-national, not as much as the Chinese, but still in some ways pretty ethno-national. However, the Soviet Union, or the Russian Federation, at its peak already encapsulated so many different nations and ethnicities, and you see that a lot with their use of the Chechens and some of the other more Muslim nations that are at the southern border of what is considered Russia now. The Russian Empire has always been a bit more of a polyglot conglomerate of ethnicities. But they believe in the Russian identity. They believe in Russia as a nation. They believe in Russia as a culture. They believe in Russia's history, and mostly their history defending against people who want to conquer them. I mean, Russia cannot be conquered. And I've said it before in the podcast. We started the podcast talking about this issue, and here we've come to a moment in time where everything is coming out. Everything can be seen for exactly what it is. And I want to walk you through this. We have to ask ourselves now, when a Lindsey Graham says that $200 billion is the best money we've ever spent, they're fighting against the Russians in Ukraine. What does he mean? What does Lindsey Graham mean when he says this is the best $200 billion we've ever spent? Surely he can't mean it's for the American citizens in any immediate way. Surely he can't mean it helps the economy that's already stricken in strife with debt. Surely he can't mean that an escalation of conflict between Russia and the West through the proxy of Ukraine is a net positive for anybody in the world. Surely he can't mean that, and he doesn't mean that. What Lindsey Graham is saying echoes what Andrew Bustamante stated earlier on, when we played what he stated early on in the podcast, but earlier on in this year, I think it was, in his podcast or his podcast tour, talking about this Russia-Ukraine conflict. What Lindsey Graham is saying is that we are in an arms race. And make no mistake about it. I don't care if your water's still running, if your electricity's still on, if your heat was still on a few short months ago in the cold places of the country. I don't care if your Netflix still works, if your Wi-Fi still works, if there's still food on the shelf. None of that matters. We are in an arms race. We are in an arms race for military dominance, strategic military dominance in a geopolitical game of risk. That is where we are. Anybody who tells you different, they are lying to you. We are in an arms race with China and Russia. And in reality, Russia and China are in the same boat for now. They're going to play nice. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. But in the end, the Russians and the Chinese will come to blows as well. And that is an insight that really plays into what I want to talk about at a more local, granular level when it comes to communism and Marxism. But for now, we're in an arms race. So what Lindsey Graham is saying is echoing what Andrew Bustamante said, that this entire theater in Ukraine is nothing more but an exhibition of military capacities between world superpowers. There's some truth to that. There's some merit to that. And they're willing to run up as much of a tab as necessary to come out on top of that military exhibition. This is the West and Russia displaying their military capacities for one another. Now, Russia may genuinely be trying to push into Ukraine and take the Donbass and make sure that Crimea stays secure. And some parties from the West or the Eastern Bloc, the fault line there, mainly in the Ukraine, are trying to protect their sovereign interests. They want to have a country called Ukraine, and they want to maintain their sovereignty and not get absorbed by Russia. That's an exercise of futility, in my opinion. And the Rhino establishment that's cucking for this theater knows it. And they're willing to use the Ukrainians, and they're willing to slaughter as many Ukrainians as they need to. And this is the real impulse that has become the norm of our military-industrial complex. I mean, it's such an anti-human convention of wisdom. It's such an anti-human convergence of resources. And I mean, we've seen that. We've seen that all the time. That's nothing new. That's nothing new. But this is a unique moment in history. It's a unique moment because now the amount of debt that's accrued all across the world from this monetary system is now going to be contingent and hedged on who has military supremacy. When the system was put in place, again, I take you back to the end of World War II, when the Bretton Woods Conference restructured the entire global economy, and then the nail that sort of tied everything together, the nail that sort of pulled this economic interest together into a now military industrial complex endeavor was the inception of Israel. And nobody can deny that. I mean, the first official act of the United Nations was Israel in many ways. I mean, away from the economic restructuring with Bretton Woods Conference and the World Bank and the IMF, the first geopolitical flag that was planted was Israel. And it wasn't by accident. And it wasn't 100% genuine. And I'm not saying that Israel isn't a place and it doesn't deserve to exist, because it does. But we need to get clear about why and what we're willing to do in order to protect it. And that's what I'm going to try and impress upon you here. Israel is our ally, depending on how this whole thing falls, right? I mean, nothing is set in stone. Right? Nothing is set in stone. And we got to get clear about that. And I don't think the boomers, with all due respect, I don't think the boomers really want to get clear about we are in the fog of war. And now we're in the law of uncertainty and unintended consequences. So the unique part about this moment, this chapter of the fight for military dominance, is the debt that's accrued, the stability, the faith in the economic system that was built after World War II is now hangs in the balance as well, right? Again, the last time this was in flux, the last time the economic system was in change, the last time there was a clear military dominant power. It was America, and it was the West. It was the Allied forces, because we had just won World War II. And I've told you before, and I'll tell you again, and a lot of boomers don't like to hear this. World War II was a war that was fought between two globalist groups. It was a world war that was fought over corporate interests. It was a world war that was fought over ideologies that manifested into corporate interests. Everybody wants, and now they use that narrative against everybody because people's familiarity with history is so shoddy that they can give you the lowest hanging fruit of either narrative, and you jump and start to scarf on it, just like Adam and Eve did in the garden, right? Easily manipulated since time immemorial. But the war was fought between two globalist ambitions. And if you really want to get down to the nitty gritty, I can't tell who was really fighting who in World War II. I mean, I know what position everybody took when the stakes got the highest and what the outcome was, and then what the narrative was that was told, that was sold, that's been sitting at the altar of global politics since 1945. I know what they told us. But why was it that Henry Ford, right? Look it up. I think it's Henry Ford. I believe it was Henry Ford. I don't think it was Gerald Ford. Did Henry Ford's portrait hang in Hitler's study? Look it up for me, Tanner, real quick. But I believe it was Henry Ford. Is that right? Let's look it up. 1 second. Give me 1 second. I'll look this up really quick. Henry Ford. Portrait. I hate giving people wrong information. And Hitler's study. Okay, yes. So there's a rumor. There is a rumor that both Henry Ford, that Adolf Hitler had a framed picture of Henry Ford on his wall behind his desk in his study. And as I said in one of the last episodes, if you ever trained martial arts, if you're a part of a martial arts school or academy, you'll see that your master's pictures are framed on the dojo wall or on the academy wall or the gym wall or whatever the case may be. There's always a homage paid to those that taught you or your masters. And obviously you could say that the Nazi or the German ingenuity, maybe took cue from Henry Ford from an automotive standpoint and things like that. Okay, sure. But when it comes to the pictures you hang on your wall, especially a movement that was so ideologically framed as the Nazi movement or the Nazi party, I think Henry Ford had a little more significance in his automotive ingenuity. Okay. And my point in saying that is it's not just Henry Ford. It's not just a connection there with Henry Ford. The West was invested in the Nazi war effort. That's the reality. And if you go back in the history, if you really go back in the history, what you'll know to be a fact is after World War I, when the Nazis had to pay reparations, the West, Western Wall Street bankers, international bankers, but Wall Street bankers, they were globalists then. Remember, this is right after the inception of the Fed, 1913. Then you had World War I. Then you had the Nazis lose, not the Nazis yet, but the Germans. The Germans lose World War I. They're made to pay reparations. The West paid the reparations. We paid the reparations because we believed in German ingenuity. We believed in the German economy or the German people, the German nation. We believed in Germany to be productive enough and manufacture enough valuable assets to make good on us basically fronting the money for their reparations. Imagine that now. I want everybody to let that sink in. After Germany lost World War I, they were made to pay reparations, and American bankers, Western bankers, were invested in the rebuild of Germany, and we agreed to pay their reparations. Same way we agreed to rebuild the Ukraine. And it's not by accident that when the Nazis came across the Ukraine in World War II, that the Ukrainians threw on the swastikas. I mean, this is all sure history. This isn't conspiracy theory. And I'll talk about that a little bit in a moment as well. But I just want to correlate to you how the past pops back up. Now, BlackRock, Wall Street bankers, the World Economic Forum, international bankers or corporate interests want to invest in the rebuild of Ukraine. Same way they did Germany after the First World War. So who are we really fighting? I mean, I know a lot of people died. I know a lot of people lost their lives all around the world. Everybody has a military. Everybody has soldiers. We just passed Memorial Day. Everybody has fallen soldiers that are to be remembered. But why did they lose their lives? This is an important question. And this is an important question we should ask on the tail end of remembering our fallen soldiers. Not only here in America, but having the humility to remember the fallen soldiers that may have fought in unrighteous wars all around the world, because we all have a story like that. Everybody had soldiers that gave their lives for some military effort. The question is that effort genuine? Is that effort what they said it was? And in World War I, we beat the Germans. The Germans had to pay reparations. Our financial elites paid the reparations until the American economy hit some road bumps, and we called in the debt. We called in the interest on the loans of Germany. And it was upon that platform that Adolf Hitler was able to rally the new grassroots energy of the Nazi party. And who did he throw it on? The Jewish bankers, right? That was the narrative he spun. These Western, Crown, Central Bank, Jewish bankers called in these loans that are going to basically make the German economy implode. And the German economy did implode for a time. And Hitler rallied. He rallied the people. They became a manufacturing epicenter. They turned on the war machine. And then they looked to seek vengeance on those who they felt contributed to their downfall. And there you have the precursor of World War II. Now, am I saying that the propaganda Hitler sold was true? No. But what I'm saying is we put him in power. I mean, it was our business dealings in great part that led to the platform he was able to use. And the same thing you could say is being done with Vladimir Putin. I'm just telling you the way it is. I'm not making a moral claim on the thing yet. I'll get to that in a moment. But I'm just laying out the history, the way it went down, the way they don't teach you in school, the way they go out of their way to not teach your kids in school. And now they'll give them gender theory, and that's just the most absurd version of how they want to distract your children and brainwash the future generations. The first part was STEM, this great race for scientific supremacy, right? Military-industrial complex, okay? My point is this. World War II, the platform that the Nazis were able to build their entire grassroots energy around, was all predicated on a business deal that went extremely wrong with West and Western bankers. And you see, after the Nazis raise up this war machine in a very short period of time, wage a war on the entire world in the most globalist ambition you could possibly imagine. I mean, who goes and tries to conquer the British Empire, the French Empire, the British Empire, and the Russian Empire? I mean, these motherfuckers were globalists to the max, and everybody now calls them nationalists or fascists. No, they had national rhetoric. They had national rhetoric at the center of their movement, but their ambitions were global. I mean, you can see it. If they could have got U-boats to New York City, the United States was going to have a war on their borders as well. These people the Nazis weren't going to stop. They were going to go as far as they need to, because to them, they couldn't have secured Germany's future without securing the entire thing. The only way to secure their sovereignty or their national interest was to expand everybody else's homeland. I mean, they tried to conquer 3 ancient empires. Okay. These people were globalists. They weren't nationalists, all right? Hitler was a globalist. He loses the war. The Germans lose the war. They pull Japan into it. Japan loses as well. We drop 2 atomic bombs on up their ass. Okay. And, tragic, terrible. That's what happens when science and war and military, that's the height of how out of control things can get. Quick. A warning to heed for where we are today. That's how out of control things can get very, very quick. And remember now, this is all after 1907 Mackinder's World Island theory that says the control of the heartland and the Eurasian world island is the control or the springboard for global dominance. Now you have this world in one of the places one of the scenarios Mackinder suggested could be the springboard is if a Sino-Japanese empire conquered Russia. Okay, and Russia was a part of the Allied forces in the Second World War. We were allies until we weren't allies, and then we became Cold War enemies. So they lose after World War II, and now the whole thing gets restructured. The entire economic system gets restructured. Bretton Woods Conference. And the cornerstone of this economic restructure is not America's ingenuity. It's not America's population or our workforce or our corporations or our intellectual properties or any of that. I mean, yeah, all of that's there. All of that tells a great story. And I'm not saying America, ingenuity, corporations, and our people, our work was not a contributing factor. But the real juice behind being able to restructure an entire global economy to one single reserve currency, the real juice was that we had the biggest gun on the playground. It's very simple. We had military dominance. We had just won a world war. And at the time, Russia was our ally, who was the second probably most significant power in the whole deal, although they had just lost 10 million Russian soldiers in order to fight back the German war machine, maybe more than that. But we had the juice, okay? That has prevailed until now. That global economic system of Bretton Woods Conference, which gave birth to the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and the Federal Reserve, the expanded Federal Reserve or centralized banking system throughout the West, has prevailed until now. The problem with it is we have this clear schism of cost, the cost of living, and the cost of goods, and the price of wages. Now, I'm not going to give you some Bernie Sanders bring the living wage, but that's immaterial. Let's go deeper than that. Who sets these prices? Who has been setting these prices since after World War II? Your elites, the Uniparty, the globalists. The same people who were the progenitors of World War II are setting the price. The same people who tried to stake Germany's reparations on the hopes that they could profit from the crisis of rebuilding Germany, the German rebuilding Germany after World War I. These are the same people. Anybody who tells you different is lying to you. These are the same people, and it's the same ambition. It's the same thought process. The only thing that's changed is how quick you could get your thought process to somebody else through the Wi-Fi connection. That's all that's changed. First, I had to walk, then I had to horseback, then I had to send it on a train or locomotive, then it was car, then it was airplane, now it's instant. That's the only thing that's changed. And because of that, they get instant results. And they're getting instant results. Oh, their ambitions are growing. Their ambitions are growing. And the debt ceiling is a great example. But again, when Lindsey Graham says this is the best $200 billion they've ever spent, sending it to the Ukraine, what he means is that we are now in an all-out arms race. And the arms race, the result of the arms race, isn't just going to be a deterrent of military conflict. It's not going to just be a deterrent. It's going to uphold the full faith of the entire financial system. See, a lot of people think that the U.S. dollar is the juice of America. The U.S. dollar is the juice because America's military has the juice. And wherever our dollar is, wherever we trade, wherever our biggest export, US dollars, as the reserve currency, wherever our dollars are, our American military is. And if you go out and you map out where all of our NATO bases are, you'll see that we're protecting the greatest American interest that there is, which is the American military as it stands today. And I'm not saying that's how it has to be. And I'm not saying that's not how it has to be. What I'm going to tell you today is something that will sound very radical. We are in an arms race, and we've crossed the point of no return. And we have to win the arms race. We have to win twice. Right now, the free people of America, all the easy answers are behind us. All the easy answers are behind us now. All the easy decisions are behind us now. There was a time for that. You boomers had that chance. That's done. We're past that now. There's not going to be a fairy tale ending here. There'll be no Les Miserables for you all for the matinee show. We're past that. We're in an arms race. We have to win the arms race. Why do we have to win the arms race? Because we know what will happen if the Chinese win the arms race. We know what will happen if the Chinese come out with military dominance. We'll live in a global, tyrannical slave society. How do we know that? The Chinese already do that to their own people there in China. Not a hard equation. We know what will happen if the Russians win the arms race. In my opinion. Eventually, the Russians will fight the Chinese, and then the Russians fight with the Chinese. The Russians will expand to Europe, and same scenario. I mean, don't get me wrong. You got state censorship and all those things there in Russia as well. And I'm going to play the clip where Donald Trump talks about Vladimir Putin, and I agree with the sentiment that Donald Trump expressed about how the media depicts Vladimir Putin and why they depict him that way. And we'll talk about all that and more to come today. But we know if the Russians win, they have an axe to grind with the West. And the Russians, by and large, see America as an extension of the crown. And the Russians and the crown, the Russians and the British Empire are on the tail end of a 200-year war between them called the Great Game. And they see America as having been carrying water for the British. And that's not a conspiracy. Vladimir Putin comes right out and says, you Americans, in connection with these Western Europeans, they view us all as the same, greatly because we've acted as the same. We will not divorce the crown. And because of that, we take on all the crown's beefs. It's the reality. So we know what will happen if the Russians win. What will happen if the globalists win? What will happen if the European monarchies win? Well, if the European monarchies win, they will try and subdue China. They will try and punk China into carrying water and being their proxy, their slave in this great reset. That's what you're watching here. This is the jump ball we're in. If the globalists win, it doesn't mean they're going to defeat China. They're going to try and subdue China. They're going to try and punk China. They're going to try and say, China, you're going to serve as the calling card for totalitarian, tyrannical global government ambition for the entire world. And we're going to send the manufacturing through you. And because of that, everybody will have to come and bow in Beijing, and which will really mean that they're bowing to the party of Davos. That's what will happen if the globalists win. We have to win twice. We have to beat the Russians and the Chinese. And then the America First conservative patriot movement of this country has to have their hands on the wheel when we achieve military dominance or reestablish military dominance. That's what has to happen, guys. I know it's a tough pill to swallow. I know it's a hard thing to confront. We have to win twice now. And when you get yourself down in a game, I think I understand this because I'm an athlete, 5 minutes left to go in the game, you're down 10. Everybody thinks we have to score 10 points. Yeah, you have to score 10 points, but you also have to get five stops. You also have to get 5 defensive stops in order to be able to score the 10 points. And that's the part a lot of people leave out. And that's why a lot of teams, when they get down, can't come back, because their mindset is we have to score. No, the most important thing is you have to stop the other team from scoring first, or the lead continues to grow, or you stay 10 points behind and the clock runs out. That's the position we're in now. We have to win twice. We have to defeat the Russians and the Chinese, and we have to defeat the globalists here at home. And when I say here at home, I don't really mean in the West. I mean here in America. And part of us defeating the globalists is divorcing from the globalists and divorcing our military power and prowess from the interests of Western Europe. They do not belong to us. We do not belong to them. We revolted from them for a reason. We declared our independence from them for a reason. We are not Europeans. We are not Atlanticists. We are a Pacific power. We are a Western hemispheric power. Our interests are not there in Vienna. Our interests are not there in Davos. Our interests are not there in Paris. They're not there in London. Our interests are here in Washington, D.C., and our interests are here all across the world. I mean, all across the country, in your local city, town, community, home, in your personal. That's where the American interests lie. Now, when they say we're spending the best $200 billion we possibly could spend, why are they saying that we can run? Why do they believe we can run the tab up? Why do they believe we can run the tab up on this debt ceiling? Again, because we're in an arms race, and they know that the faith of the currency, the juice of the currency, doesn't have nothing to do with how many potatoes you can ship. Doesn't have anything to do with how many barrels of wheat you can ship, how many barrels of oil you can ship. I mean, that's a good story about energy and, all of these baked in political narratives about environmentalism, and we can't frack our own oil because it'll pollute the air and blah, 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 blah. It'll kill the sea turtles, blah, 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 blah. Propaganda. The juice is the American military. The reason why the United States dollar is the reserve currency is because everybody has full faith in the Americans' ability to do war and to come shoot it out if we need to about our business. That's why Lindsey Graham is saying that the $200 billion we're spending in the Ukraine is the best money we've ever spent. Because he won't say it to you like that. None of these DC elites will tell it to you like that. They'll say that we're protecting democracy. That this is all about democracy, which I told you early on in the show is one of the four heresies of the West. Scientific method. Science will give us the answer. It'll bridge the gap between man and God. And as science has started to uncover that there is something intelligent, something very uniquely intelligent behind the design of this world, human beings, the entire cosmos, they still deny the God part. It was never their desire to bridge the gap, use science to bridge the gap between God and man. It was always the desire to supplant God with science. And they show you that every day. Scientism. One of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. The four heresies are the scientific method, democracy, computer technology, and artificial intelligence. Four heresies of the West. The four horsemen of the apocalypse: ideological, secularism, communism, liberalism, globalism. Right? Why the four horsemen? Well, first comes the death horse, secularism, scientific. No bigger progenitor of death than science itself. Secularism. Then you have the famine, communism, patent. Okay. Then you have war, liberalism. Oh, the neocon, neoliberal war machine. It's always on. It's on right now. $200 billion, best chicken we've ever spent. All my black audience will love that. In the neighborhood, we reference money. Sometimes we refer to it as chicken. Okay. Best chicken we've ever spent right there in the Ukraine, $200 billion. And finally, last but not least, the conquest horse, right? And that's why globalism will be, in effect, the end, right? The Satan-led globalism. And that's what they're going for. And they're showing us it, okay? But I say that to refresh your memory, but really, democracy. One of the original heresies of the West, we are so gung-ho about democracy. And you'll hear it in all the rhetoric, the AOCs and the Pelosi's and the St. John Pierre's, the Speaker of the Secretary of Press, the press secretary. Everybody's talking about democracy and how Vladimir, even Rhino Saint Ron the Sanctimonious. Democracy, 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 democracy. It's like this thing that you can say, but you can never really touch it. And you certainly can't touch it if your elections aren't fair. You certainly can't touch it if your elections aren't secure. Democracy, democracy, democracy. It's a thing that everybody can get on board with. It's like the greatest sales pitch in history. Everybody's in. Like Dean Phillips here, who's the CD3 congressman in Minnesota. His campaign, everybody's invited. Everybody's invited. Who's this everybody? You're not invited. You can barely put $500 cash together in a crisis. And that's most of the American working class. You're certainly not invited. Whatever party Dean Phillips is talking about, you aren't invited to it. That's a fact. I mean, that's just a matter of economic, social economic certainty. You're not invited to that party. You can't get in. You can't afford it. The best $200 billion we ever spent. He won't tell you that it's all a military game because your little mind can't handle that. That's how these people think. They'll just tell you it's about democracy and hopefully you'll bite. Hopefully you'll chew that. And if the war gets to a cataclysmic part, everybody afterward goes with the side that's best for their own personal interests. And they forget about why we ever were in the war in the first place. And this is how the boomers got caught up in this post-World War II democratic liberal order. And it's how the boomers sat and watched John F. Kennedy get his head blown off on national television, okay, in front of the entire world, and just reverted back into this sort of crony capitalism. Best $200 billion we've ever spent, Lindsey Graham said. And he's wrong. It's not the best $200 billion we've ever spent, but I understand the sentiment. I understand the real reason he's saying it, because we are in an arms race and we have to win that arms race. The question is, how do we win that arms race? How can we actually win? Is the $200 billion going to actually give us a victory? No. What it's going to do for the uniparty? The uniparty can perpetuate this crisis. Oh, there's a crisis, there's an economic crisis. The only crisis is their leadership. The only crisis is the crisis that they have manufactured. They manufacture a boogeyman, and then they use the boogeyman to scare you into your home and eventually scare you into surrendering your rights, freedoms, ability to live. And this is where the left and the Marxists, they get this right. And when you see the young black man go into a Target, I'm seeing these videos pop up all across the internet now. When you see the young black man go into Walgreens and just start taking stuff off the shelves, and now these Democrat cities, these Democrat policies don't allow you to arrest and prosecute certain thefts if it's under a certain amount of money. I think it's like $1,000, anything under $1,000. So you can just go in, $900 every day if you wanted to, I guess. It's just $900. I mean, this is the world we're living in. But what's funny about it is, what did I say about propaganda? What did I say about it's not just lies, it's half truth and the truth out of context. I can't impress that upon you enough. Propaganda is not just lies. It is lies, it is half truth and the truth out of context. Is it true that we live under a financial and economic Ponzi scheme of global proportions? Is that true? Of course it is. Is it true that the economy is rigged? Of course it is. Is it true that we live under corporatocracy of crony capitalism and shoddy moral, ethical, value-based governance? Of course it is. All of that's true. Is it even true that in the final consideration, we the people must stand up against this corporatocracy and take what is ours? That is even true. That's written right there in the Constitution. That's written right there in the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights. I mean, it's just right there. We have this milk toast version. Post-World War II, really, post the 1960s and 70s, post-Nixon, post them killing Kennedy, we have this real milk toast in the conservative movement. We have this real milk toast sentiment of our own citizenship. It's very watered down. It's like, no, the government will always protect what's written there in the Constitution. Are you kidding me? No, what the black people are saying is, hey, the whole thing is a scam. So if the Democrats are going to let us create chaos on the back end of the scam, so be it. It's every man for himself. That's what they're saying. The question is, why are the Democrats letting them do it? Does it have anything to do with the economic implications? Is it going to put Walgreens out of business? Is it going to put Target out of business? Is it going to put Walmart out of business? No, because Walmart's biggest asset isn't the retail goods they sell. It's the real estate that they own in their portfolio. You guys don't even understand how the game works. It's the insurance. Of course, they're going to mark all of that off as goods that were lost, and they have every year. They have the insurance to cover that, and the insurance has more money than the banks, and the insurance has more money than the banks because the banks pay the insurance companies to protect the faith of the people in the money, in the system. Walmart ain't going out of business because people go in and steal a couple $900 loads of goods. Why? Because the price is already jacked up 1,000%. The markup's already 1,000%. They don't need to. You think a TV set really costs $5,000 to make? If it costs $5,000 to make, nobody would sell it because nobody could make any money off of it. It's a markup because you're a jerk off, because you want to stroke it in 8K. You got to turn on Pornhub and stroke that in 8K. That's why they can mark it up. They're just watching the progression of being a jerk off go up, and they're marking the price up right along with it. It's been that way for 100 years. This was the instantiation. This was the inception of the Federal Reserve and centralized digital currency. Give us your freedom. Give us your rights. Give us your self-governance. In exchange, we'll give you paper money that will serve as your agreement to this upward growth of being a jerk off. Right? But Fox News will throw over the TV all day long that the theft is out of control because they're bought into the same corporate system, which is why they sold a bunch of their shares to BlackRock, which is why they punted on Dominion, which is why they're going to come out and do everything they can to undermine Donald Trump's presidency through the RNC, which is why McCarthy and all these rhinos constantly get a platform on Fox News, but they'll show you black people taking T-shirts from Target. Like that's going to undermine and erode America's economy or America's justice system for that matter. No, what it's doing is it's undermining the spirit of being an American citizen that's based on a God and Christian order. Cheating, lying, stealing, right? Chaos, undermining the meaning of a hard day's work, the value of work, the value of being able to go work for something, get a check for it, then pay for the things that you want. And being able to decide and decipher between the things you want and the things you need. Discernment, logic, decision-making, prioritization, critical thought. That's why they're letting people steal thousands of dollars worth of shit from your local department stores. It's got nothing to do with the economy. It's got nothing to do with Target. It's got nothing to do with Walmart. It's got nothing to do with the money. They don't need the money. They print the money. And if these companies fail, they will bail these companies out. Or some other company will come up and absorb the cannibalized parts of this company, and some owner or some founder or some stockholder will get a huge payday to perpetuate the status quo. Do you follow? He won't tell you. Lindsey Graham's, the rhinos of the world, won't tell you what we're doing there in the Ukraine. I'll tell you. He says it's the best money we've ever spent because we are now engaged in a full frontal conflict with the one nation that the West has had a hard on since after World War II. And Winston Churchill laid it out. The greatest threat is there in communist Russia. And with that, I will say this again to reiterate. Yes, we have to win twice. We have to win the arms race, and we have to win here at home so we are in control when our military proves its dominance. And we better hope that we win the arms race, because if we don't win the arms race, we're going to be pushing the ball uphill in a way that we could not possibly imagine. Okay? Because of the military, because somebody's coming to bomb us here at home, less than likely, I'd say. 400 million guns. Now they say it's 700 million guns. 700 million guns kind of ensure, and now people have 3D printers, so that just made the American populace even more dangerous. And not even that. Now you have how-to on how to break down metals and turn them into ammunition. And trust me, you may not have a full copper hollow point, but if I break down some metals, some other metals, and can get ammunition that's even half as good as your contemporary hollow point or FMJ, it's going to do a lot of damage. Oh, it's going to do a lot of damage if you don't have on some body armor. Okay, and if I can touch flesh with it, you're going to have a problem. You're going to have this bad day at Black Rock. Okay, so far be it me to say, is America getting invaded? Founding fathers were brilliant to make sure to have the Second Amendment ensure that we're probably not going to face a land invasion. Now, a nuke, I don't know. If I was our enemy, I would probably nuke us because you can't invade us, okay? Too much juice. Not only does military have juice, but our people have juice through the Second Amendment, which the communists and the Democrats and the leftists are also trying to subvert. Probably not going to an invasion. But what is at stake in this military dominance, what is at stake is the supremacy of our currency. What happens with the debt? Everybody knows the debt is a scam. Everybody knows the debt is an agreement. The debt is a contemporary agreement of faith in a people, and even more important, a people's leadership. And right now, our leadership is on the griddle versus China and Putin and their leadership. And you got those European snakes, those European fence-sitting turncoats playing both sides against the middle. We got to divorce these people. The currency is what hangs in the balance now of this military arms race. We have to win that arms race. And when we win that arms race, we have to win here at home so we have our hands on the wheel of what needs to become the next chapter of American leadership across the world. Okay? Now, I want to get to some of these videos right now. We're about 60 minutes in. Thank you for bearing with me. I got to go back and explain for all the new viewers. Okay? I got to explain what we're looking at here. A lot of people don't understand. I hope you have the self-respect and the humility to go back and listen to some of this stuff again a second time. I really do. Because this is the signal from the noise. All right? Let's play the first video here. I want to pull back up the clip of President Trump responding to questions about Vladimir Putin. I thought he did a beautiful job. I really did. Oh, Bill O'Reilly. Oh, there you go. Rhino extraordinaire. Mr. Neocon himself.
Do you respect Putin?
I do respect him.
Do you? Why?
Well, I respect a lot of people, but that doesn't mean I'm going to get along with him. He's a leader of his country.
Putin's a killer.
A lot of killers. We got a lot of killers. Well, you think our country's so innocent? You think our country's so innocent?
I don't know of any government leaders that are killers anymore.
Well, take a look at what we've done too. We've made a lot of mistakes. I've been against the war in Iraq from the beginning.
Yeah, mistakes are different than...
A lot of mistakes, okay, but a lot of people were killed. So a lot of killers around, believe me.
Red pill. Big red pill he just dropped in Bill O'Reilly's lap. And you see how flippant. I mean, understand, I know many of you may like Bill O'Reilly. His voice comforts you. You know, he has this sort of monotone, even-keeled boomer, way about him. I know you like him. He's a cool dude. I'm not saying he's not cool. He's got a cool way about him. Okay. Rhino. Neocon. You see how flippant our media elites are when they talk about death? I mean, you see how they have this sort of arbitrary and hypocritical vantage point on death itself? You think that's by accident? He says Putin's a killer. Now, what he means when he says Putin is a killer is that Putin was actually a KGB. He was in the KGB, right? And the KGB and the Russians are just known killers, which is why so many people have had trouble over the years historically trying to conquer the Russian Empire, because they just have they got a way about them. I mean, they're willing to live, fight, and die for what they believe in. And they tend to go a little bit further than your conventional radical materialists. In fact, their ambitions around material are so great, they're willing to go an extra step further and this sort of a inhumane, war type of mentality. Hence, they let people out of prisons when they went to start to fight the Ukraine, and they sent all the prisoners to the front line to get slaughtered and, be cannon fodder. Killers. That's what he means when he says Putin's a killer. And he is a killer, and you can't trust him. He's an assassin. He's a spook. But look how flippant he was about defining killer with respect or comparison to us here in the West. See, to him, if you're a political lobbyist, or if you're a corporatist, or if you're a technocrat, or if you're an Ivy League silk stocking country club Republican, and you make decisions about war, but you're not involved in the killing, then you're not a killer. This is a man who has no sacred honor. This is a man. Look how flippant he was when Donald Trump talked about Iraq and Afghanistan. And Bill O'Reilly just kind of gives him but I mean, that's not the same thing. No, it is the same thing, Bill. It is the exact same thing, dumbass. Too smart for your own good. And a lot of these neocon rhino boomers, like Kevin McCarthy, are too smart for their own good in a genuine way. Not like when the NBA told me I'm too smart for my own good for questioning the corporatocracy. Not like that. These people are too smart for their own good in the deepest metaphysical, spiritual sense. It is the same thing, Bill. Iraq and Afghanistan, that was the exact same thing. And it's even worse if you want to get down to it, because you all promoted yourselves as fighting for democracy and freedom and justice and so on and so forth. Vladimir Putin with the Russians, because of the entrenched, the more ethno-national nature of the Russian people, all of the Russians know that what they're willing to do to maintain Russia. America is the only player on the board, the only big player on the board that has this propagandized narrative going about what we need to be willing to do in order to preserve our citizenship and our way of life. We're the only ones lying. The Russians ain't lying. The Chinese aren't lying. They're telling their people, we need to defeat the Americans at all costs. I mean, they're coming right out and saying it. We're the only ones lying to ourselves at this point. And we are lying to ourselves, and we need to get clear about it right now. But that was a great example. That was a great example of Donald Trump just dropping the hammer on Fox News and the rhino establishment. Bill, stop. There are a lot of killers out there. You think we're so innocent? I respect them. You respect your enemies. Doesn't mean I get along with them. Doesn't mean we're gonna have we're palling around. But I respect them. You respect your enemies. And when you've never been in a fist fight in your life, you have trouble with the concept of respecting your enemies. And a lot of you silk-stocking, rhino, neocon Finocchios do not deserve to have a single ounce of power in this country in a time where we are at war, because you've never been in a fight in your life. You've been protected by the benefits of what the military-industrial complex's superiority has provided for you. And that's why at the drop of a hat, at a moment's notice, you are willing to compromise yourself, your views, your values, your ethics, your morals on behalf of the military-industrial complex. Well, just let the military run it then. If you're going to cuck for the military, just let the military run it. Because I'm sick of this whole back and forth between the DC elites, the corporate elites, the financial elites, and the military. And this whole shadow game they're playing, like who's really running the deal, right? This whole sort of, whack-a-mole they're playing with who's really running this shit. We know who's running it. The military's running it. The juice is running it. You all need their protection. It's old school. It's racket, mafia shit, okay? You need their protection, and the military's willing to play along insofar as everybody believes in the currency narrative, the scam currency narrative, and they can still get their checks, and they can still do their blackout operations and siphon off their money or get their huge $5 trillion expansion of the debt ceiling to go and fund the war. I mean, come on. What are we really talking about? We're going to dump the money in the Ukraine. I don't care what they say on paper. I don't care what they say on paper. The debt ceiling has been raised to expand, to fund the war effort, to gear up for the war effort. The war there in the Ukraine, but also the war on you here at home. Let's go to the next video, can we? I forget what the next video was. I think it's the one with the mayor. The mayor. You know, shift gears here. The war on you at home. The money's going to go to the Ukraine, and it's going to go to the war on you at home. And I didn't plan it this way, but this next video just speaks to it perfectly. Go ahead, roll the tape.
It has come to my attention that your educators are distributing essentially what is child pornography in the classroom. I've spoken to a judge this evening. She's already confirmed that. So I'm going to give you a simple choice. You either choose to resign from this Board of Education, or you will be charged. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. God bless this man. God bless this man who takes his mayor position serious, right? God bless this man who takes his mayor position serious, and he's willing to stand up to these people. But the money that we're signing in to raise the debt ceiling is going to go to persecute. It's going to go to the lawfare that they're going to wage against mayors like him. That's the reality, folks. The money we're signing, the money that we're putting on the books to expand, to raise the debt ceiling is going to go to the lawfare persecution and witch hunt of mayors just like this patriot here, who walked in with his jurisdiction and his authority as mayor of the city and said, you got a choice. You either stop distributing pornographic reading material to our young people, or I'm charging you. God bless this man. God bless. That's growing a set of principles. As the great Professor Penn has said in his previous podcast, it's never too late to grow a set of principles. Certainly too late to grow a set of balls for some of you who are gender fluid, non-binaries. Certainly too late to grow a set of balls, a set of organic balls. I know the technocrats and the transhumanists, right? I know the artificial intelligent transhumanist ectofarm guys would like to tell you they could grow you a set of balls, and that'll come next. They're going to take your skin cells, put it in a petri dish, and evolve you the same way you would be if you had gone on a XY chromosome versus XX chromosome, right? They're gonna show you what your counter gender self would be like, and they're gonna give you the parts from that self so you can actually have organic nuts. Not there yet, on our way. But as it stands now, you can't grow an organic set of balls. You can, however, grow some principles. I love that Professor Penn, gave that one-liner in the last few podcasts. Never too late for you to grow a set of principles. And he was talking to boomers, and I love that because this guy looks like he's probably a boomer from the look of his age. Never too late to grow a set of principles, right? But that's what the money's going to be used for. The Democrats have shown us. I don't know why anybody believes that the Democrats or that any of these administrative state, intelligence community, security state, deep state will properly use these funds. Who's doing the audit? Show me the money. Show me the money. How can we even get a real forensic accounting? Why do we trust that our government will actually properly audit itself? I mean, people have long been saying Rand Paul Ron, audit the Fed. Now we're to the point where we need to just abolish the Fed because there is no audit that we could trust. And I tend to agree with that. This is why they're expanding the debt ceiling. They want to go fight a war. They're doing the same thing that they have to win twice. They have to win the arms race, and they have to win here at home. They're fighting a two-front war, and it's very hard for you all to believe that. It's very hard for you to understand that, to confront that, to swallow that pill. But they are fighting the same two-front war that we're fighting. It's not one war. Let's be clear. We have to fight a global war for military dominance that is going to determine which currency has the full faith of the people, which is really the fear of the people. Let's be honest. And who's going to win here at home in terms of who runs the home team that wins out there on the road. It's the truth. That's where we are. Let's go to the next clip. This one is Yuri, communist whistleblower, old footage. And he explains this whole Marxist-Leninist thing with great, great clarity. That the Marxists, wait 1 second. The Marxists are not interested in equality. They're not interested in inclusion. And this is the problem that I have. God bless the MLB pitcher who has now stood up and said, you know what, this is wrong. The Dodgers and the MLB not only inviting the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, but then honoring them. This is wrong. The only problem I have with it is that he uses the basis of their language to criticize it. This isn't inclusion. This isn't inclusion. This isn't a safe place for everybody. Don't use their language. When you use their language, it's almost like it's almost as if you accept the premise that any of the things they say they want in the first place are real. They're not. Nothing about this Marxist scam has anything to do with any of the social issues they say. It's not about equality for black people. It's not about equality for women. It's not even about equality for transgenders and gays and lesbians. It's not about equality or inclusion of anybody. It's about power, and it's about taking a polyglot of groups you can identify as minorities and weaponizing them against the majority in some crazy brainwashed psyop narrative where the majority doesn't understand or realize their rights are being stripped. That's what they're doing. And when they're done, they will line up all the people who worked for them and shoot them in the back of the head. You think that's conspiracy? You think that's outrage? You think that's extreme? It's happened before. All you got to do is know the history of all of these communist regimes. And here, communist whistleblower Yuri Bizmenov explains it with great, great clarity. Roll the footage.
But your leftists in United States, all these professors and all these beautiful civil rights defenders, they are instrumental in the process of the subversion only to destabilize the nation. When their job is completed, they are not needed anymore. They know too much. Some of them, when they get disillusioned, when they see that Marxist-Leninists come to power, obviously they get offended. They think that they will come to power. That will never happen, of course. They will be lined up against the wall and shot. But they may turn into the most bitter enemies of Marxist-Leninists when they come to power. And that's what happened in Nicaragua. You remember most of these former Marxist-Leninists were either put to prison or one of them split, and now he's working against Sandinistas. It happened in Grenada when Maurice Bishop was already a Marxist. He was executed by a new Marxist who was more Marxist than this Marxist. Same happened in Afghanistan when first there was Taraki, he was killed by Amin, then Amin was killed by Babrak Karmal with the help of KGB. Same happened in Bangladesh when Mujibur Rahman, very pro-Soviet leftist, was assassinated by his own Marxist-Leninist military comrades. It's the same pattern everywhere.
It's the same pattern everywhere. Nothing new under the sun with these Marxists and Leninists. Tanner, did you follow? Did you track that? He's telling you, all you freak purple-haired white liberal suburban women that are pandering this weird Marxist, Leninist, postmodern, socialist, communist ideology. All of y'all are getting rounded up. You're getting slaved out. You're getting shot. You're getting, you're going to be sexless, whatever it is. You're not going to be running the show. It's a complete lie. When I watch these beta males, if you're a man and you watch these beta males push these talking points to the left, I mean, you can just see the lack of sincerity in their whole demeanor. I can see the lack of sincerity in their entire demeanor. They don't mean it. Like, they actually don't mean it. They don't. It's not that they really believe it. Those type of cucks are a different level of cuck, right? The ones who actually believe it. These are cucks for a reason. This is cucking with a purpose. This is the cucking justified. The means justifies the end. These people are cucking as a strategy, as a political strategy. When the job is done, sure, they'll take the benefits along the way, right? They'll take the stray girl from the bar who needs to feel like she's dating or spreading her legs for a guy who has some resemblance of intelligence, so she can feel like she's not stupid herself and brag about him to her friends, show his woke social media posts and how he's so enlightened, right? Of course, they'll take the benefits, right? And the guy will take the girl who will pretend that she loves him because he fits this ideological framework. Sure. But over time, when the real hitters, when the real communists, when the real Marxists win, if they win, none of you people are going to get a spot at the table. None of you people are going to be useful anymore. They're ecto-farming around you, dummy. Your shelf life is visible. I mean, they're not even hiding it. We're going to start to grow people. If you can't grow people, Yuval Noah Harari, if you can't grow people, you will become obsolete. If you don't have the ability, if you don't have the financial resources or the know-how to grow organic people, you will be meaningless. And the best way to deal with you meaningless people, this is Yuval. Yuval's actually pitching the humane way to deal with the meaningless people, if you really look at it. The humane way to deal with you meaningless drones, you meaningless sacks of meat, the humane way to deal with you is to give you drugs and video games. That's the best possible scenario. The best way that we can look to deal with these meaningless people is to give them drugs and video games, because the alternative is to line you up and shoot you in the head. Understand. To them, Yuval is your saving grace. That's why Barack Obama, Mr. Double Tap Missile Drone Strike, thinks of Yuval Harari as this great thought leader. He's giving me a way to appease my conscience in my globalist, transhuman, technocratic ambitions. He's giving me a way to clear my conscience and give the vast majority of people drugs and video games and keep them hooked on that instead of having to just shoot them all. Now, I would say that Yuval Noah Harari is an anti-Jew for even suggesting something so sacrilegious and anti-human. But hey, that's just me. I'm just a Catholic. I don't know. What do I know, right? Okay. They're going to kill you. That's the reality. They don't give the transgender. That's just a way to, I mean, don't get me wrong. Is the transgender thing a gateway, a clear gateway to the most perverted form of satanic ritual you could find? Sure. Yeah. But don't get caught up in it. They're going to kill you one way or another. They're going to kill you one way. They're going to kill you when it comes to black people, and they're going to use black people. Roll the next tape. I think the next video is the prime candidate. Watch how the black man cucks for eugenics. Watch how the black man becomes a eugenics cuck. He doesn't even know where his thought process comes from. And they think this dude is cool. This is the kind of guy that will be on a million person podcast, million subscriber podcast. This guy right here. Play it. Roll the tape. These are your black bourgeoisie sellouts. Go ahead.
Yeah. I trust you more than any white man on this planet.
Yeah.
And I'm never going to trust nobody but black people.
Gotcha.
Black people are perfect, man.
Yeah.
Why you laughing?
Come on, smart. Don't do that.
Why you
now
laughing?
you see what you doing?
I'm asking you.
I know what you doing.
What am I doing?
Point out every little thing. Why you laughing?
Because body language. I'm gonna tell you why.
Oh.
Listen, I gotta tell you. Because
Nah.
we've been taught. I'm gonna keep it real with you, bro.
Yeah.
We've been taught. You know what I call white people? I call them recessives, right?
Yeah.
We are genetically superior than any other race on this planet. This is a fact. Black people are genetically superior.
Yeah.
Period. But they make it seem like we are inferior. We are the majority, but they make it seem like we're the minority. He's the minority. You're the majority.
Yeah.
So when I tell you black people are perfect,
Yeah.
that's not a joke. That's not a, we have to, when I tell you the greatest woman on this planet is the black woman, that's not a joke.
Oh, God, stop. Can't take it. These guys are fucking clowns. Pardon my language. I thought today, because we were going to give a good history lesson, I was going to try and refrain from swearing, only for the young people who may be listening to the podcast. And in my reflection of my profanity, I guess I could consider not swearing as much on behalf of the fact that some young people may be watching. And a lot of parents tend to say that they want to watch the podcast with their young people because it's that informational. I appreciate that. Fuck this guy. Fuck this guy. These are the black bourgeoisie sellouts that the mainstream media industrial complex has empowered to walk around like the figureheads and the thought leaders of the black community, and they say stupid shit like that. Black people are the superior people? And how much black exactly do you have to be black? This is the same this is eugenics. And it's the same stupid ass propaganda and thought and theory that the Darwinists pushed, that there was some magical white race. How much white do you have to be? Which white? Which white? Are the people from the Caucasus Mountains the same as the Southern Italians? Are the Germanics the same as the Saxons and the Anglos? I mean, what are we talking about here? This is a way for scientists, secularism, scientific method. This is a way for scientists to create narratives to organize stupid ass people. This is a way for scientists to create narratives that organize really, really dumb people. Really dumb. I mean, extraordinarily dumb. The only superior thing about this motherfucker is his stupidity. He has a superior stupidity. Black people are superior in every way. By what metric? By what metric? Even if you want to make the claim that the crown, which was predominantly European, went around and colonized much of Africa, which the Europeans did colonize much of Africa, how superior are you to get colonized? We got colonized, motherfucker. We lost. So how are you superior? Genetically superior for what? For what? For what set of circumstances? What are you talking about? What are you talking about? What does that even mean? And I don't even like to go there. But the reality is we got colonized. And then we came to America and we were colonized again. Then we were colonized and co-opted in politics. Then we were colonized and co-opted in the narrative. And here you are pushing the same eugenics-based, scientist-based, scientific method-based nonsense and propaganda that colonized us in the first place. Doesn't even know it. He thinks he's fucking smart. And there are a bunch of black women who will hear him say, oh, the black woman is the most superior woman, and they'll want to get in bed with this fucking clown. And you'll give him some pussy. Then you'll be mad at Donald Trump because he says, grab him by the pussy. But you'll tell this guy that he can choke you, spit on you, piss on you, grab your hair, bite you, so on and so forth, because he said black women are superior, but he's pushing white superiority, racial, eugenics, scientific method. And y'all believe this type of guy? It's hard for me to stomach. I mean, really, as a real person, as a real guy, a real individual, it's hard for me to stomach this kind of stuff. I got one more video for you, Tanner, I'm going to pull up and send you. And it has to do with this same sort of, no, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. Again, what is propaganda? Not just lies, it's the half-truth and truth out of context. Should we talk about colonization? Should we talk about the history of Europe or the history of America versus the history of Africa? We sure as hell better talk about it, because the Chinese are going to talk about it. The Russians are going to talk about it. We're in a geopolitical jump ball. We're fighting two wars at once. Yes, we need to address the history of all of these nations up until this point, but we also don't need to let it become some strange, weird, illogical propaganda that distracts us here at home. Give me one moment. I'm going to send you this video that just outlines this perfectly. Here we go. 1 second, Tanner. This is coming to you right now. Let me see. Where are you at? Oh, there you go, Tanner. And I don't think I could tie it together any better than this in the podcast here. We got about 5 minutes left. I don't think I could give you a video that would tie this whole thing together any better than what we're going to show you here. This is how the media, this is how the narrative is drawn. This is how people play both sides of the same coin, right? The double cross and the triple cross. We are living in the age of the double cross and triple cross. And here you have a white man. Yeah, a white man. Sounds British. I think he's British. Shocker that the Brits would be the ones with this type of superiority complex, because they have a superiority complex when it comes to Europeans and whites, not just about black people. They just have a scale, right? So they have their own superiority complex. In fact, Darwinism and social Darwinism, which became the theory that really informed racial superiority in the slave trade, came from none other than the study and the scientific literature of the Crown, funded by the Crown. Right?
South Africa is a treaty member of the International Criminal Court. If Putin comes here in August as planned, your government will be obliged to arrest him. As head of the ANC, do you believe your government should and indeed will arrest Vladimir Putin?
If it was according to the ANC, we will want President Putin to be here even tomorrow.
You would?
To come to our country. But
you would welcome Vladimir Putin here right now?
Of course we will welcome.
A man who is being investigated for war crimes by the International Criminal Court.
We will welcome him to come here as part and parcel of BRICS, but we know that we are constrained by the ICC. Putin is a head of state. Do you think that a head of state can just be arrested anywhere? How many crimes have your country committed in Iraq? How many crimes have everyone else who's so vocal today committed in Iraq and Afghanistan? Have you arrested them? You're making a lot of noise about putting a state of working for peace between Ukraine and Russia, and you failed to resolve the war. Where are the weapons of mass destruction? Tony Blair went to Iraq and claimed that there are weapons of mass destruction. More than millions of people have died in Iraq and Afghanistan, and there are no weapons of mass destruction. We know what the war is about.
Mr. Secretary General,
between Russia and Ukraine. We want peace. That's what is important, so that world can thrive.
We don't have much time left.
In this video, they're trying to tell a South African leader that if Vladimir Putin comes to visit South Africa, that the South African government will be obligated to arrest Vladimir Putin. And the guy goes, what? You can't tell us you can't tell us how to run our country. You cannot tell us how to run our country. We are not bound. We are constrained by the International Criminal Court in this geopolitical jump ball, but we are not bound by it. We're constrained by it, not bound by it. There's a difference, right? We consider it, but we are not bound by it. If Vladimir Putin comes to our country as a world leader, we would welcome him as a part of the BRICS, which is what? An economic geopolitical alliance. As a part of the BRICS, we must welcome Vladimir Putin to South Africa. BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. We must receive Vladimir Putin. But if you want to talk about war criminals, if you want to talk about war crimes, if you want to talk about genocide, if you want to talk about crimes against humanity, we got to point right back to Russia, right back to Iraq and Afghanistan. Is it by coincidence that he brought up the same point that Donald Trump did? Is it by who really is about black people? Who really is more in alignment with the interests of black people and African people and people who live under the tyranny of the establishment on the board right now? Because every time I pull up one of these people, they make it seem like Donald Trump has this extreme white supremacy rhetoric and message. But as I pull up more and more black people who understand what's going on in the world, their messaging seems to align. Find me a person. Find me a black person like this fucking sellout we just showed you who talks this white eugenics shit. And I guarantee you they're pro Black Lives Matter LGBT2. Yeah, that's funny. LGBTQ and Me Too movement. They're pro all of those. I guarantee you. Just find me one. Find me one. Show me one who talks like that. And I'll show you somebody who I could lay out their entire digital footprint. I mean, I know it to boot. Meanwhile, you got a real South African leader. Funny. The black guy talks about the superiority of the black race, of melanated people, that originates back to his origins in Africa. Meanwhile, the African man, who is the leader currently in the respective lineage of his racial ancestry, the black man who's currently there in South Africa says, we're going to welcome Vladimir Putin. We're not buying into that Western propaganda. Yet black people will still vote Democrat under the auspices that Donald Trump must be defeated in order to preserve democracy and freedom. You can't square it. You can't make it up. You couldn't sit down and write up this level of contradiction if you tried. In fact, the only way to do it would be to start with the pen and paper and say, everything that I write is going to contradict itself. That is the level you would have to, that is the mindset you would have to go into in creating a dialogue that has this much contradiction, this much cultural contradiction. Cultural, social, political, economic contradiction. You'd have to start with a pen and paper with the mentality that everything you write down is going to intentionally contradict itself. To end here, Kevin McCarthy, Rhino, I told you 5 months ago, you couldn't trust him. Everybody knew you couldn't trust him. When will you, boomer, silk stocking, Ivy League Republicans, get it through your thick fucking skull? And when will the rest of the Make America Great Again movement get it through your skull? These people cannot be trusted. These people cannot be trusted. They will never uphold anything that is going to be a net positive for the American people, for the working class, for the poor, because their whole mentality, their entire cultural worldview, the edifice of their worldview is all predicated on military supremacy and the Ponzi scheme of a global economic system of which they think they can always count on to bail out the aristocratic elites of our society. This has been another episode of Please Call Me Crazy, brought to you by Free People of America, powered by TireGet.com. You have to buy tires from somebody. Buy them from us. Help fund the movement. Help support the movement. I'm your host, Royce White. Don't die a jerk off. The fight continues, and as always, Godspeed.